All right, everyone. Good evening. We are going to just wait to make sure that we are live online. I think that there were some issues last time, so I'm just going to wait for a thumbs up. Just bear with me for 1 second. I'm just waiting for the thumbs up to make sure we're streaming live. So, all right, looks like we are good to go. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. Welcome to the Agoura Hills Planning Commission meeting of April 16th, 2026. Can you all hear me now? Fantastic. At this time, please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. If you wish to speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each agenda item and submit it to the secretary over here before the public comment period of each item. I will now call this meeting into order, and I will defer to Commissioner Sharon for tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Please stand. Hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to our roll call for tonight, and I will defer to our Secretary, Michelle Hubbs.
Good evening. Commissioner Platzer,
Present.
Commissioner Roth,
Present.
Commissioner Stein,
Present.
Vice Chair Sharon,
Present.
Chair Reinhardt. Commissioner Roth, you have a quorum with Chair Reinhardt absent.
Thank you very much. And for everyone's edification, Chair Reinhardt is unable to attend this meeting, so I will be serving as chair tonight. Chair Reinhardt has submitted a request for an excused absence. Do I have a motion and a second to approve her request?
Commissioner Stein makes a motion to approve Chair's Reinhardt's request to be excused.
Thank you very much. Chair Roth seconds. And I will now defer to our secretary for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Platzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Stein,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sharon,
Aye.
Chair Roth.
Aye.
Chair Roth, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you very much. And I will now move to the approval of tonight's agenda. Will the makers of the motion and the second to approve tonight's agenda please state your names?
Commissioner Sharon makes a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Commissioner Stein seconds.
Thank you very much. I will now defer to our secretary for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Platzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Stein,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sharon,
Aye.
Chair Roth.
Aye.
Chair Roth, you have approval 4-0.
Great, thank you very much. Before we move on to public comment, there's going to be a few different public comment periods tonight. So I just want to be very clear that the item I believe most of the folks are in the room for, that public comment period will come when that item is being heard in a little bit. So at this time, I'm going to defer to our, there he is, our city attorney, Travis Kaya, to give an announcement.
Yeah, just to reiterate, so there are two opportunities for you to provide public comment this evening. As the chair will explain, the next portion of the meeting is reserved for comments that are not listed on the agenda, but are within the Planning Commission subject matter jurisdiction. The Commission will also conduct a public hearing for item number 2. If you wish to comment specifically on item number 2, please wait until that item is called. Note that the comments presented during public hearing item number 2 must relate specifically to that item. If you provide comments on that item during the general comment period, you will not have an opportunity to speak again during the public hearing. So just want to make that clear.
And then just to add, if we can get through this, it'll be very quick when we get to y'all public comment period here in a second. So this section is reserved for individuals wishing to speak on items, again, not listed on the agenda, that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. If you have materials to distribute to the Commission, please do not approach us. Provide them to the Secretary for your distribution on your behalf. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Individuals addressing the Commission shall refrain from disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of this meeting. I will now defer to our Secretary for any public comments. Have we received any for the general public comment period?
No written comments were received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Awesome, thank you all. I will now announce, we will now be moving to our consent calendar item. So this section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. I will now defer to our Secretary for public comment.
No written comments were received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any questions from the Commission on the consent calendar? Hearing and seeing none, I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt tonight's consent calendar item. Will the maker of the motion please, and second, please state your names.
Commissioner Stein moves to adopt the consent calendar.
Thank you very much. And a second? Hearing none, I will, Commissioner Roth seconds tonight's consent calendar item. And I will now defer to our secretary for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Platzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stein?
Aye. Here. Yes?
Vice Chair Sharon?
Aye.
Chair Roth?
Aye.
Chair Roth, you have approval 4-0.
Great, thank you very much. So we will now move to tonight's public hearing, which is to conduct a public hearing to consider the adoption of a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt a resolution approving a general plan amendment to revise the table of contents in the safety element with the updated multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, the adopted evacuation plan, and updated evacuation analysis, and make findings of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. I will now open the public hearing and defer to the Community Development Director. By the way, congratulations, Robbie Nesevich. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. Tonight we'll be discussing a proposed general plan amendment that incorporates an evacuation analysis into our safety element and makes other minor updates, which we will get into during the presentation. Here with me tonight is Nathan Hamburger, our City Manager. We've got Charmaine Yumbel, our Public Works Director, and we also have Matt Stewart, who works for Kimley Horn, who's contracted as our City Traffic Engineer. Next slide, please. So for tonight's agenda, I'll be giving you a brief project description, followed by the background. I'll be tossing the ball over to Matt to talk about the evacuation analysis, and then I'll be finishing off the presentation with the general plan updates, CEQA, next steps, and staff's recommendation. Moving on to the project description, I first want to say just how happy I am that we have so many people here tonight getting involved in the public planning process, because I know this subject is really important to everybody in the city as well as to city staff. That being said, we have received many public comments, and based on the comments received, it's clear that there is some misinformation out there about what this project is actually doing. So if you move to the next slide. So what does this project actually do? Well, recent state legislation requires cities to identify evacuation routes and their capacity, safety, and viability, and evacuation locations under a range of emergency scenarios. So at its core, this project analyzes the capacity and safety of existing evacuation routes and uses that data to determine whether the evacuation routes are viable and to inform potential future planning efforts. There are also minor textural amendments proposed for the general plan, which include adopting the evacuation analysis by reference as part of the safety element, and updating other language and exhibits within the safety element to reference current planning documents that have already been approved and adopted, such as the most recent fire hazard severity zone maps, which were updated in 2025, and the Las Virgenes Malibu Council of Governments multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, which was updated in 2024. Because that's a mouthful, I'm going to simply refer to the hazard mitigation plan as the HMP. Next slide, please. So due to the content of many of the public comments received, I also just want to set the record straight for what this item does not do. Many comments express worries about housing at the commercial centers on Canaan Road, housing density in general, or even concerns about the city shutting down roadway lanes during emergencies. I want to make it abundantly clear that this project does not involve any modifications to the city's existing evacuation plan. It does not approve any physical development or permanent roadway modifications. It does not approve any action which would reduce roadway capacity, and it does not affect land use, zoning, or housing in any form. As stated previously, the evacuation analysis before the Planning Commission today is an analysis of the existing evacuation routes and their capacity, safety, and viability. Next slide. Before I get into the project background, I also want to explain to the Planning Commissioners and the public what the city's actual role is during an evacuation. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, or the Los Angeles County Fire Department are the agencies with the authority to order an evacuation and conduct emergency efforts directly related to an incident. All decisions are made by the established incident commander for the emergency in consultation with all relevant law enforcement agencies. Furthermore, California law gives the authority to law enforcement to restrict access to any area where a menace to public health or safety exists. It is not the role of the city's Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, to put up traffic control or restrict access to specific areas. This means that the ultimate decision on whether to implement certain traffic control measures, including counterflow, is at the discretion of Incident Command, not the city. So in other words, the city does not manage the emergency itself. Instead, it supports the Incident Command by coordinating resources, interagency communication, and communication with the public. On the screen are some broad examples of the role of the city's Emergency Operations Center. Next slide. And one more. So moving on to the project background, how did we get here? Recent state legislation, notably AB 747 and AB 1409, require that upon the next revision of a local hazard mitigation plan, the safety element shall be reviewed and updated as necessary to identify evacuation routes and their capacity, safety, and viability, and evacuation locations under a range of emergency scenarios. So simply put, this evacuation analysis is required by law. Agoura Hills updated the HMP on August 28, 2024, and the city staff began reviewing and updating the safety element prior to its adoption in compliance with the law. After review of the safety element and the HMP, staff determined that it was necessary to begin drafting the evacuation analysis that is before the Planning Commission today. Next slide. An initial draft of the evacuation analysis and general plan updates were brought before the Land Use and Economic Development Subcommittee, or the LUEDC, during a public meeting on March 27, 2025, which was advertised on the city's website. Following the LUEDC meeting, the item went to the Planning Commission on May 1st, 2025, where many members of the public were in attendance. Next slide. At the Planning Commission meeting on May 1st, 2025, city staff presented the draft evacuation analysis and received feedback from the Planning Commission, which can be categorized as follows. Consider incorporating an emergency scenario involving the evacuation of residences, businesses, and children while schools are in session. Address public safety communication strategies with cooperation from outside agencies. And reevaluate the number and size of vehicles exiting from Old Agoura. After receiving feedback from the Planning Commission, staff issued an additional task order to Kimley Horn to analyze an additional wildfire scenario while children are in school. We also added an additional passenger car equivalent factor to Old Agoura to account for horse trailers. After the revised analysis was completed, it was distributed to CAL FIRE, the California Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, or the BOF, the California Office of Geological Survey, and other local agencies that may provide emergency services to the city, such as the Los Angeles County Fire Department and Sheriff, and the Ventura County Office of Emergency Services. Next slide, please. As a bit of background information, you can think of CAL FIRE as the administrative arm of the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. When the city distributed the evacuation analysis and safety element update to the BOF and CAL FIRE, staff worked directly with Fire Captain Joe Kennedy of CAL FIRE to address comments during an initial 90-day public review period. After all comments were addressed, Captain Joe Kennedy presented the city's safety element update and evacuation analysis to the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, specifically the Resource Protection Subcommittee, during a public meeting that occurred on March 10th, 2026. During the public meeting, the Resource Protection Subcommittee noted that the city's safety element and evacuation analysis were one of the best and most thorough that they have ever seen. And this is a huge testament to the hard work that Matt and Charmaine and the whole team has put into this evacuation analysis, because the BOF reviews every safety element in the state of California. Next slide. Following the meeting on March 10, 2026, the BOF and CAL FIRE issued a formal letter recommending no changes to the city's safety element or evacuation analysis, and the letter also describes in detail how the city's safety element and evacuation analysis meet all statutory requirements. This letter is attached to the staff report. Now I'm going to turn it over to our traffic engineer, Matt Stewart, to discuss the evacuation analysis.
Thank you, Robbie. So to provide a little background and add on to what Robbie had shared, the purpose of the evacuation analysis is to comply with the two Assembly bills noted here, 747 and 1409. The analysis identifies the evacuation routes and analyzes the capacity, safety, and viability under a range of emergency scenarios, and uses this data to recommend possible mitigation measures that can be implemented by emergency personnel. So to identify the evacuation routes, we conducted an analysis using guidance from Cal OPR, the Evacuation Planning Technical Advisory. It evaluates the routes that people can use to evacuate, focusing on the routes identified in the evacuation plan from 2020. It identifies the US 101 freeway as the ultimate evacuation gateway to assess how residents and visitors can evacuate to the freeway, and then ultimately would use evacuation locations outside the city. So 4 scenarios were analyzed. The first 3 would occur at night. The first 2 would be an all-at-once evacuation. So number 1 is a wildfire coming from the northeast, and number 2 is a wildfire coming from the south. And in both scenarios, it analyzes everybody leaving all at once. And then scenarios 3 and 4 would analyze a phased evacuation, with number 3 being during the nighttime, and number 4 analyzing during a daytime while schools are in session and workers are in the city. So to explain how we chose these 4 scenarios, out of all types of hazards, wildfires do present the most significant risk to the city. And based on historical data of where fires have occurred and where they spread, and regarding the rates of spread, the vast majority